Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Friday, September 12th, 2025. All right, first thing, I'm taking a long weekend, so that means there will be no Monday show. So I'll have a bit of a late start next week, but I'll be back working and writing on Monday, and then I'll record Monday night and put out the Tuesday show. So I'll have a bit of a late start next week, but the page at antiwar.com will be updated on Monday with all the news and views for you to go read. So if you want to catch up, you could always go to antiwar.com. I just wanted to say that at the top for the people who don't make it till the end. So the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, Netanyahu signs off on major West Bank settlement. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday signed off on a major expansion of illegal Jewish settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and vowed that there would never be a Palestinian state. So he said this at a signing ceremony which took place at a settlement, quote, "We are going to fulfill our promise that there will be no Palestinian state. This place belongs to us," end quote. Again, he said, "This place belongs to us." And of course, he's referring to the West Bank. So the agreement that Netanyahu signed authorizes construction for the controversial E1 settlement plan, which was put on ice for decades due to international opposition. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, a West Bank settler himself, recently announced that Israel would push through the project to bury the idea of a Palestinian state. And at the signing ceremony, Smotrich said that Israel would soon be celebrating the annexation of the West Bank. This is Smotrich. He said, quote, "The Prime Minister told me I'm staying here to hear what you have to say, and I know what you intend to say. Mr. Prime Minister, all of us soon will thank you and congratulate and celebrate together the application of sovereignty throughout Judea and Samaria," end quote. And there he was using the biblical name for the West Bank. And the signing ceremony comes as the Israeli government is considering annexing parts of the West Bank in response to several Western countries moving to recognize a Palestinian state. Smotrich recently outlined a proposal for annexing 82% of the West Bank and leaving 6 Palestinian population centers isolated as islands, a plan that he said aims for maximum territory and minimum Arab population. So they want the territory, they want the land, they don't want the Palestinians to be there. And U.S. officials have made very clear that the Trump administration will not oppose Israel if it moves to annex the West Bank, whether they try to annex the whole thing or just portions of it. They've made it very clear they're not going to oppose it. And of course, you know, they act like, oh, Israel's a sovereign country, we're not going to tell them what to do. Well, the U.S., considering how much military aid and support the U.S. provides Israel, the U.S., by extension, supports the occupation of the West Bank and the Israeli military and the settler activity there, and anything that they choose to do. It's all underwritten by the U.S. All right, so the next one here, IDF and Starvation kill 79 Palestinians in Gaza in 24 hours. So Gaza's health ministry said on Thursday that Israeli forces killed 72 Palestinians and wounded 356 over the previous 24-hour period as U.S.-backed Israeli attacks continue across the Strip. And on top of the violent deaths, at least 7 people, including 1 child, died of malnutrition amid the ongoing famine due to the Israeli siege. And you can see this picture here is of a young boy who was killed while attempting to get aid. Again, this is just see this stuff every single day. And the Israeli military continued its offensive aimed at conquering Gaza City on Thursday, destroying more residential buildings and killing dozens of people as it's ordering all civilians in the city to flee to the Al-Mawasi tent camp in southern Gaza. Medical sources told Al Jazeera that at least 31 Palestinians were killed in Gaza City on Thursday. So while telling civilians to flee to the south, the Israeli military continues to bomb the south. At least 4 people were killed by an airstrike in the southern city of Khan Yunis, and at least 15 people were killed throughout Gaza while attempting to get aid. So the aid massacres continue. Nearly 2,500 aid-related deaths since the end of May, according to the health ministry's count. Just absolutely horrific. All right, so the next one here, Qatar says that Israel's strikes killed any hope for the release of Israeli captives. So Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani has said that Israel's airstrikes on Doha that targeted Hamas officials killed any hope for the release of Israeli captives in Gaza. Throughout Israel's genocidal war in Gaza, Al Thani has served as a mediator between Israel and Hamas and said that he had just met with family members of an Israeli who is still being held in Gaza. He said, quote, "I was meeting one of the hostages' families the morning of the attack. They are counting on this mediation. They have no other hope for that. I think that what Netanyahu has done yesterday, he just killed any hope for those hostages," end quote. And then on Thursday, Al Thani addressed an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council where he made similar comments. He said, quote, "Extremists that rule Israel today do not care about the hostages. Otherwise, how do we justify the timing of this attack?" End quote. And of course, the Israeli attacks targeted Doha after the U.S. passed this new ceasefire proposal to Hamas. And according to Hamas officials, they were gathered to discuss the ceasefire when the strikes hit. They killed 5 lower-level members and killed 1 Qatari security officer. So despite the attack, Al Thani vowed that Qatar would, quote, "continue our humanitarian and diplomatic role without any hesitation in order to stop the bloodshed," end quote. So the 15-member Security Council released a statement condemning the Israeli attack, which means this statement had the backing of the U.S. because it was released by the Security Council. So the council said, quote, "The members of the Israeli Security Council expressed their condemnation of the recent strikes in Doha, the territory of a key mediator, on September 9th. They expressed a deep regret at the loss of civilian life," end quote. So while the U.S. backed that statement, they also defended Israel at the UN Security Council meeting. The U.S. envoy there, acting U.S. Ambassador Dorothy Shea, she defended Israel from charges that it did not want a ceasefire, which is just honestly humiliating to say something like that at this point. She said, quote, "It is inappropriate for any member to use this to question Israel's commitment to bringing their hostages home," end quote. Again, just a humiliating thing to have a U.S. ambassador say at this point in September 2025. Oh man, it's almost 2 years since October 7th. So President Trump has claimed that he's very unhappy. There's a report in the Wall Street Journal that he had this angry phone call with Netanyahu. But of course, I find that very hard to believe. I think it's very, very likely that the U.S. knew what they were going to do. There was reporting in Israeli media that the U.S. gave the green light. And there's been no sign. He's not cutting Israel. He's not imposing any consequences. So I think a lot of that is just for show. These reports that we're seeing about how mad Trump is at Netanyahu, it's very similar to what we saw throughout Biden, the Biden era. All right, so the next one here, Israel kills at least 46 in Yemen airstrikes. So this is an update from yesterday's story. But this is a major massacre of people in Yemen. Again, these are the same strikes that I covered yesterday, but the death toll has risen, and it just hasn't really gotten any attention. So I wanted to highlight it again. So Yemen's health ministry said on Thursday that the death toll in the Israeli airstrikes that hit the Yemeni capital of Sana'a and the Jaf province on Wednesday has risen to 46, including 11 women and 5 children. Another 165 people were wounded in the attacks, including 31 children and 29 women. Health Ministry spokesman Anis Al-Asbahi said that the numbers were a non-final toll, suggesting that it could rise if rescue workers dig more dead or wounded people out of the rubble. And the pictures of the aftermath in the neighborhood, there's some serious rubble. I mean, these were major airstrikes. And the majority of the people who were killed, 38 of them, died in the strikes on Sana'a, which targeted residential areas in the Al-Tahrir neighborhood. Photos and videos of the aftermath show a significant amount of rubble in the neighborhood, as I said, and children who were wounded in the attack. This is one of those children at a hospital in the aftermath who was wounded in the strikes. So despite the heavy strikes, the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, remained defiant and announced more attacks on Israel on Thursday. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Saree said, quote, "The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation targeting an Israeli military target in the Negev region using a Palestine II hypersonic ballistic missile," end quote. The Israeli military said that it intercepted a missile fired from Yemen, while Saree said that the attack achieved its goal because it caused Israelis to flee to the shelters. Saree also said that Yemeni forces fired 3 drones at Israel and vowed that the attacks would continue until there's a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the Israeli blockade on the Palestinian territory. I was looking at Al Masirah TV, which is a Yemeni TV channel, and this wasn't put out in any of their official statements, but someone seems to suggest that they were targeting Dimona, maybe a reference to Israel's nuclear facility where they have their nuclear weapons program, which I think if you're trying to target that, and you're playing with fire there, considering everything Israel's done over the past 2 years. And they do have nuclear weapons, and no other country in the region does. So anyway, this is just the update on the airstrikes, and the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, they are not going to back down in the face of these Israeli strikes. All right, so the next one here, 1 killed in Israeli strike on southern Lebanon. This one is from Jason Ditz. So Israel continued with its airstrikes against Lebanon on Thursday, attacking a person on a motorcycle in the Tyre district in the south, and then launching a flurry of attacks against the eastern Bekaa Valley. The motorcyclist was attacked on the road near Ain Bal, according to Lebanese health ministry. He was killed in the attack, but has yet to be identified conclusively in any of the reports, and Israel has not put out a statement on it. So a lot of people get killed in southern Lebanon while riding motorcycles. And at the same time, the IDF's Arabic language spokesman visited the Israeli military position in southern Lebanon. So they're really flaunting this kind of continued occupation, and they continue to launch airstrikes, not every day, but nearly every day. Just in blatant violation of that ceasefire deal that they signed last year. All right, so the next one here, Trump may meet Syria's al-Qaeda leader turned president in NYC. So Syrian media has confirmed that Syria's de facto president, Ahmed al-Shara, a former al-Qaeda leader, will be attending the UN General Assembly in New York City this month, where he may land a meeting with President Trump. Syrian diplomatic sources told the Media Line that the U.S. has granted an entry visa to Shara for the UN General Assembly, which he will be attending from September 21st to September 25th, a step that the U.S. is taking while denying visas to Palestinian Authority officials as an effort to impede Western countries from recognizing a Palestinian state. So you really see the balance there. You got them not letting Mahmoud Abbas coming into New York City, but you're letting the founder of al-Qaeda in Syria, a guy who joined al-Qaeda when Osama bin Laden was still in charge, you're going to let him come. So the Media Line report also said that preparations are underway for a bilateral meeting between Trump and Shara on the sidelines of the General Assembly. The two leaders met in Saudi Arabia back in May, and Trump praised Shara as a young, attractive guy with a strong past. So Shara, who's formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, he joined al-Qaeda after and went to fight U.S. troops in Iraq after the invasion. He was in prison from 2006 to 2011. And then in 2012, he went over to Syria with a mandate from al-Qaeda to start the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. It was called the al-Nusra Front. And in 2016, he claimed that the al-Nusra Front was cutting ties with al-Qaeda. And at the time, it was very cordial. He thanked al-Qaeda for understanding. They put out a statement and said, good luck to you and your endeavors. That's not exactly what they said, but it was all very friendly. And then in 2017, Jilani merged his group with several other Islamist factions to form Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, and that's the group that led the offensive that ousted former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. According to the New Arab, Syria's new foreign minister, Assad al-Shaibani, he will also be traveling to New York, but according to the New Arab, he was also a founding member of the al-Nusra Front, and he oversaw its transition into HTS. So the U.S. will they'll be welcoming the two former al-Qaeda leaders to New York less than 2 weeks after the 24th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, which killed 2,606 people at the Twin Towers in New York City. Reports say that the U.S. may be placing travel restrictions on Iranian officials who are attending the General Assembly, but there's no sign that travel will be limited for Shara and his delegation. The Media Line report said Shara may also visit New York's Turkish House, which is where the Turkish diplomatic facilities are based, and he might be going there with Erdogan, Turkey's president, who is a major backer of HTS and Shara. So while Shara now presents himself as a moderate, Syrian government forces have been responsible for the massacre of thousands of Alawites and other minorities since he took power. Since Assad was ousted, there have been over 3,000 extrajudicial executions in Syria. Despite the violence, the U.S. has embraced the new Syrian government by lifting sanctions and removing HTS from its list of terror organizations. And Israel, which supported and celebrated the overthrow of Assad, has used the HTS takeover as a pretext to invade and occupy more territory in southwest Syria. And some people have said, said to me, what do you want the U.S. to keep the sanctions on? You're always very critical of the new Syrian government. And I've said ultimately lifting the sanctions is the right move because the sanctions were just hurting the Syrians. But the U.S. really is kind of supporting this government. Like the things that Tom Barrack has said, claiming that the Syrian government forces who were massacring Druze in Syria were like ISIS guys in disguise. And also, it's just, we got to point out this hypocrisy and what the result of supporting this regime change in Syria was. And just a few weeks after 9/11, they're going to have a Al-Qaeda leader, former Al-Qaeda leader, visit New York City, potentially get a meeting with the president of the United States, but they're not letting the Palestinian Authority guys who have renounced violence against Israel and have done everything, have collaborated with the Israeli occupation forces, who Trump even said, what did he call Abbas, like a grandpa or something? You're not letting them come. It's just the whole thing is just crazy. So, we got to call it out. All right, the next one here. Syria claims Hezbollah cell captured. Hezbollah denies presence. So this article is from Jason Ditz. So Syria's Interior Ministry has announced that they made some high-profile arrests near the capital city of Damascus, capturing what they described as a Hezbollah terrorist cell. They claimed that the cell was threatening stability and national security in the area. The statement from Ahmed al-Daladi, the security commander in the Damascus province, claimed the raids took place west of Damascus, and images they released to social media showed as many as 5 detainees. Daladi suggested that the cell was trained in northern Hezbollah, but Hezbollah was quick to issue a statement denying involvement in the matter, saying that they had no affiliation with the detainees and maintain no presence in Syrian territory. They did have a presence at one point during the Assad government era, but of course he's been overthrown. So there could be other Shia factions in Syria that HTS wants to crack down on, and they're using Hezbollah kind of as the excuse. But you see another reason why, even though we're seeing Israel invade and bomb Syria, you see another reason, a reason why they prefer this Syrian government to Assad, because they are enemies of Hezbollah and Iran and the Shiites. All right, so the next one here, Germany wants 100,000 troops to prep for war. So this article is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So the head of the German army is calling for more than doubling its forces in response to a perceived threat from Russia. The army chief said that Berlin must be ready to fight with Moscow by 2029. The fact that they even talked like this, to me, is just insane. NATO can't go to war with Russia. There's too many nukes involved. That used to be the attitude, at least. But now they're openly planning for war. And their narrative is that Russia's going to invade Europe, even though they're still fighting in the Donbass over 3 years after they invaded eastern Ukraine. They're worried they're going to start, marching into Poland and Eastern Europe. And they want to get ready for war. And he wants to add 100,000 new troops to the military, which is more than he wants. to add 100,000 active troops, and I believe they currently have about 60,000 active. So it's a huge increase in Germany's military. Of course, because the U.S. has so many troops in Germany. I think they have like 30-something thousand. Germany doesn't have a significant, too big of a military. And a big reason why is because of the heavy U.S. troop presence. All right, so the next one here, senators seek to ramp up economic war on Russia. So another one from Kyle. So a bipartisan group of senators is introducing a new bill that will place Russia and Belarus on the state sponsor of terrorism list. Senator Lindsey Graham is lobbying President Donald Trump to support the legislation that will also put 500% tariffs on China and India for trading with Russia. So he's really pushing this, and this is something he's been pushing with Senator Richard Blumenthal, but it has like very serious support here. The idea of these really trying to ramp up the economic pressure on Russia, when in reality, I mean, if they put 500% tariffs on India or China, I mean, that's not going to hurt Russia. That's going to hurt us and just make those countries move closer to China. And then the other thing that this is their new push is the state sponsor of terrorism designation. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. bombs Somalia for the 75th time this year. So U.S. Africa Command said in a press release on Thursday that its forces launched airstrikes against al-Shabaab in the Shabelle region of southern Somalia on September 9th, marking at least the 75th time the U.S. has bombed the country this year, as the Trump administration has shattered the previous record for annual airstrikes in the country. So as usual, AFRICOM offered no details about the strikes other than saying that they were launched in support of the U.S.-backed Mogadishu-based federal government. AFRICOM stopped sharing details about casualties and assessments of civilian harm earlier this year, telling antiwar.com at the time that it was withholding such information as the new Trump administration settles in. I would say that they're pretty settled in at this point. So AFRICOM told New America, which is an organization that tracks the U.S. air war in Somalia, that although it stated, so this might sound a little confusing. So the press release said that it launched airstrikes, plural, suggesting more than one. So New America asked them, and they said that only one strike was actually launched during two engagements. Whatever that means, I should ask some military people about that language. But so based on my count, AFRICOM actually told me earlier this week that they've launched 74 airstrikes so far this year. So that this one airstrike brings that total to 75, which is a very big number, especially considering how, little attention or media coverage that this gets. So Garo Online, which is a Somali media outlet, reported on Wednesday that Somali forces had killed a member of al-Shabaab who was allegedly behind an assassination attempt against President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. The report said that the operation was conducted in the lower Shabelle region, so that puts it in the area where the U.S. claimed the strike, and said it was supported by international partners, so potentially the U.S. could have bombed this guy who they claim was behind the assassination attempt. And as I covered recently, U.S. forces at a base in Kismayo, southern Somalia, recently came under an al-Shabaab attack. AFRICOM said it was indirect fire, and they denied the al-Shabaab claims that they killed Americans. They said there was no casualties. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. attacked a boat near Venezuela multiple times. So this article is from Nick Terse at The Intercept. So people on board the boat off the coast of Venezuela that the U.S. military destroyed last Tuesday were said to have survived an initial strike, according to two American officials familiar with the matter. They were then killed shortly after in a follow-up attack. The boat was under U.S. surveillance for a significant period of time. Those on board apparently spotted the U.S. aerial assets and altered the vessel's course. U.S. officials said the boat appeared to have turned back toward shore, after which it was subjected to multiple strikes. Three sources, including Senator Rand Paul, said that the boat was attacked by one or more drones. So these were drone strikes. A very small number of Senate and House staffers separately received highly classified briefings about the attack on Tuesday. Two officials familiar with the strike were left with the impression that more attacks in the Caribbean would be forthcoming in the weeks ahead, and that's basically what Trump and Rubio and Hegseth have all said. But so they bombed this little boat multiple times. I mean, I wonder how much, the missiles cost that they fired. If it was a drone, it could have been, like an MQ-9. It could have been a Hellfire missile, to ensure that everybody's killed on the boat when the purpose is this, the supposed purpose, the stated purpose is to stop drug running, and you make sure that everybody's dead. I mean, it sounds like there's another agenda at hand here, and I think the agenda was they wanted to, send a message really to Venezuela and set a precedent for conducting these types of attacks. All right, so the next one here, files say Saudi 9/11 support began years earlier. So this article's from Headline USA, written by Jose Nino, and it is based on a report from Catherine Herridge, who she used to be at CBS News. I think she was at Fox News too, but now she's independent. But she has a report with some newly declassified FBI and CIA files about potential Saudi involvement in the 9/11 plot. So newly declassified FBI and CIA records have cast fresh doubt on the official account of the September 11th attacks, revealing what federal investigators call an advanced team of Saudi government employees who began aiding hijackers years before the tragedy. The FBI and CIA documents, which were obtained by the independent journalist Catherine Herridge, reveal that 2 Saudi government employees may have served as an advanced team for the September 11th hijackers, fundamentally challenging the official timeline by pushing potential Saudi involvement back to December 1998, nearly 3 years before the attacks that killed almost 3,000 Americans. The explosive revelations emerged from Operation Encore, the FBI's secret investigation into Saudi government connections to 9/11. Intelligence reports identify Adel al-Sadhan and Mutab al-Sadari as Saudi Ministry of Islamic Affairs officials who arrived in Southern California in December 1998, 13 months before the first hijackers landed in Los Angeles. William Avania, former FBI veteran and director of National Counterintelligence and Security Center, who investigated 9/11, told Herridge in an exclusive interview that the documents and videos make it pretty clear that they were here for that particular reason. The critical question remains at whose behest they operated, whether from the Saudi government or if they were just working for al-Qaeda directly and just happened to be Saudi employees. The most compelling evidence includes video footage from June 1999 showing the Saudi operatives conducting surveillance of Washington, D.C., landmarks later identified as potential al-Qaeda targets. The footage captures the White House and U.S. Capitol with what investigators describe as specific intent, focusing on not only the visualization of multiple sides of the building, but also the security detail. Avina noted that this was clearly not a tourist video. And then there was another video of the welcoming party for the 2 of the 9/11 hijackers. And in the video, someone says, don't film this side of the room. But at one point, the camera shakes, and you could see on the other side of the room, there's a Saudi official there at the welcoming party for these 2 hijackers. So you could go check out. She put the report. It's like a 10-minute report about it on her X account. That's pretty interesting. But that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints. One from Ahmed. I'm in Gaza City. My bag is packed, but I refuse to leave my home. One from Judge Napolitano, taking the Constitution seriously. One from Dan Steinbach, the killing of Hind Rajab, the film, the foundation, and the war crimes. One from Anatole Levin, France plans risky military deployment while government is in tatters. And our spotlight is from Brant Burleson. I helped Israel propagandize American Christians. Very interesting article from someone who used to work for an Israeli consulate in the U.S., and his role was propagandizing American Christians into supporting Israel. And that's published at the Libertarian Institute. I would highly recommend going and reading that. But that's everything. And again, I'm taking a long weekend. I'm going on a little trip with my 3-year-old, just me and him. And it'll be nice taking Sunday off. Again, so I'll be back Monday writing, and then I'll record the show Monday night for Tuesday. I think it's a good weekend. I need to get off Twitter and X for almost 2 years of watching the horrific footage from Gaza every day. And now this thing with Charlie Kirk and like the discourse about it is just so, man, it's just, I just really don't like it. What everybody, either side is saying about the whole thing. So it'll be nice to take a little break from the internet for a weekend. But anyway, that is it for me for today. I hope everybody has a good weekend. I will see you in a few days. Thanks for listening.